goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Cottage, and my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
A Jew and a Gentile talking about the king of parodies.
Wow, I did not know you were going to go there, but you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Although I've been called a fake Jew before by my wife calls me a fake Jew all the time. She's like, "You're not really Jewish." I said, and the religion they consider it because of the whole mom thing. I'm like, I don't believe in really any sort of, invisible human being in the sky. But yeah, I'll put more stock in Pinhead from Hellraiser.
Yeah. Neither does really Mel Brooks or Carl Reiner. So yeah, you're in good company.
I'm like,
it's more the history. Yeah.
It's that sort of thing. Shared suffering and shared guilt. That's what it is. You want to be Jewish? It's shared suffering and shared guilt. I jest, honestly, though. But yeah, what episode are we on, John?
Oh, you're gonna.
Do you know? Do you remember?
200 and something or other.
222.
22. Oh, okay. I was way off. I was about to say 217. I'm losing track, man.
Wow. It's 222. So in episode 222, and this week we are talking, of course, about, I would say, probably the last living legend of comedy. Like, I know we talked about, with Carl Reiner when we were talking about Summer School, how we said, oh, just call up comedy and Carl Reiner will show up. Yeah, well, he's dead. Is he dead?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say he is dead, right? Yeah, so if we're talking about living people, if you were to really call up comedy and say, give me a comedy, I don't know anyone else that you could see, people would automatically go to and say, oh yeah, Mel Brooks, like that.
The surprisingly not great Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's starting to look more and more like Emperor Palpatine. But I mean, he's still got it. He's still as sharp as a fucking tack. What is he, like 100?
He's 93.
Jesus Christ, man. We gotta put him in a hermetically sealed, container so that nothing gets that man. I don't want COVID killing Mel Brooks. I can't handle it. Today we had to deal with Norm Macdonald passing.
Oh yeah, can we just mention that real quick? That was heartbreaking to me. Norm's a hero of mine, and you get those notifications on your phone, and I saw it. I could only see the top. It said Norm Macdonald. I'm like, oh, has he got a new TV show? Has he got a new stand-up special? It says dead at 61, and my heart stopped beating for a second on that one.
Yeah, I know that I don't want to say we thoughts and prayers because as we mentioned before, we don't believe in. But I just know that our thoughts are absolutely with Norm Macdonald's family at this time. It's horrible. Cancer is a fucking piece of shit motherfucker.
Yeah, he was fighting it 9 years, didn't tell anybody. I had no idea that he was remotely sick.
Well, I mean, I had seen that he wasn't really doing a whole lot. Like, he wasn't really acting in a whole bunch of things. Really, I think what was his heyday kind of in the mid-2000s. But especially with movies. Like, he had done, obviously, Saturday Night Live, and that was really where he kind of made his bones. And I think he had a talk show for a while. And just kind of trailed off in the late 2000s into the 2010s, and didn't really hear a whole lot from him, other than he'd pop up every once in a while here or there. But it's sad to hear that he was suffering with this for that long, and it sucks. It really does. It really does suck. So, not to be a downer, but it's worth mentioning because it did literally just happen today as we were getting ready to film. Oh, we'll record, not film. But speaking of filmmakers, speaking of filmmakers, Mel Brooks is one of these people that, if you could say that someone was really a Renaissance man, I think a lot of people attribute that to certain artists, that they kind of dabble in everything. Mel Brooks really is that, right?
Yeah,
but at least when it comes to comedies and parodies.
Actor, writer, director, producer, some people don't know he produces non-comedies as well.
Yeah.
Like he produced The Fly, The Elephant Man. I know a lot of people went to both those movies thinking they're going to see parodies and went, "What the hell am I watching?"
Well, the thing is I don't. The thing is that he purposefully, with those specific films like The Fly and Elephant Man, where he knows that his name being attached to it on that end would honestly doom it financially, because people would think that it's a comedy and they get Jeff Goldblum's penis falling off. So it's one of those things.
I lost my hot dog.
But it's one of those things that he definitely does venture outside of just comedy, and he has done a lot to kind of prop up. Like, I know The Elephant Man, that film is partially responsible for honestly giving Anthony Hopkins really kind of leg up, because he really was not as well known as he was at the time that he made that film. Like, that got him bunch of other films that ultimately led him to kind of be the actor that we know of today.
Yeah, it took him from a theater actor to a movie
same
actor.
For John Hurt, who was in that film too. So it's Mel Brooks has given a lot to I think just cinema in general, and it's, again, I'm saying we need to hermetically seal the man, because he can't die. Okay, he can't.
Yeah. A little background on the guy, and Brian, I have to correct myself from earlier. He's 95, not
Jesus.
90.
Wow, even more reason.
But yeah, Mel Brooks was born Melvin Kaminsky, June 28, 1926. He has worked for over 7 decades in the field of mostly broad film farces and comedic parodies. He got his start in the Catskill Mountains, which, in terms of comedy, you either go to start or die at the Catskills. Sometimes you do both. Yeah, and then from there, he when the stand-up comic was sick, he kind of took the opportunity to get on stage, which got him jobs writing for the Sid Caesar variety show, and then the second Sid Caesar show, along with Neil Simon, Larry Gilbert, Woody Allen. Before we knew what Woody Allen was all about.
Before we knew he was a fucking creeper.
Yeah. And, with Carl Reiner, where, and they're famously known together as creating the 2,000-Year-Old Man, which, kids, you don't know what that is, ask your grandparents, they'll tell you it's a hoot. He also created and wrote a lot of Get Smart.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that.
Which, a lot of people kind of, forget about that here.
I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Brooks' father died of kidney disease at 34 when Mel Brooks was only 2 years old, and he said that was kind of a catalyst for a lot of his humor, because it started out as anger. He said, I may be angry at God or at the world for that, and I'm sure a lot of my comedy is based on anger and hostility. But yeah, after he did serve in World War II, which I think is something to note. Because he would have been in his 20s when that war happened.
That's what I'm saying. The man then makes a movie called The Producers that is a mockery of Hitler, and he's like, you know what? I actually fought that fucker.
Which, he did a lot of work in television, as we mentioned, and everything, and then just had a script that he put together that it's so weird, because the producers, were moving on to like his first directorial project here was considered so subversive for its time. No studio wanted to touch this thing, which is hilarious to think if you showed a young person today to the producers that, whether they found it funny or not, I don't know, but they'd be like, what is so, dangerous about this movie?
Why do you think people consider it subversive?
I think playing so fast and loose with like Nazi imagery, because Springtime for Hitler, the whole idea, if people haven't seen it, these two producers want to put on what they think is going to be the biggest bomb of all time on Broadway so they can collect the insurance money, and then they accidentally, like Wacky Deli style, end up making a hit. And what they write
Wacky Deli style. Everything we're going to refer to as Wacky Deli style from now on.
But yeah, they come up with Springtime for Hitler, and it's by this crazy neo-Nazi guy, and so it's a pro-Hitler production.
Yeah.
But then everybody in the audience takes it as parody, and they love it, and it ends up being a huge hit. The producers are found out, and they're thrown in the slammer. Which is also the first time I should notice that he works with Gene Wilder when they'll work together in the future. But I think the whole idea of mocking, not even mocking the Nazis, because that's not a problem, but just so freely using Nazis in a humorous way. I think that that's just, you don't go there. You don't touch that, because we got to remember, this is 1968.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is not that far removed from World War II. Like we're looking at maybe 30 some odd years. So that means that a lot of the people who went to see this film very well were fighting the Nazis in World War II. So I mean, that's I guess the big thing is just like right now we would see this as not that big deal. Like when they made the modern version of the producers, I think it was like the 2000s. I don't think anyone was really freaked out by any of that. Like, I mean, and that had Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick in it, and I don't think anyone was just like, oh God, yeah, that whole Springtime for Hitler thing. You really, you can't do that. I don't think anyone that type of visceral reaction happened at all with that one. It was just like, oh yeah, Nazis are horrible human beings, and let's laugh at them. Like that's, I think, kind of the reaction we had now. But I can imagine that back then, that is kind of a thing to do right there. I mean, outside of maybe like Grindhouse B movies of the 70s that really laid on the whole Nazi stuff thick in their movies.
I mean, this is 1 or 2 years separated from, The Sound of Music, so that's kind of to give an idea of when this movie's coming out. He did win an Oscar for Best Screenplay, which Mel Brooks is one of the few people to have an EGOT, which is the Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. And that's, I picked up his, I think he had an Emmy and then he got his Oscar. So he had it, at this point. Yeah. But yeah, I would say for me, The Producers is my favorite Mel Brooks property, which,
really?
Everybody, it's Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and they always ask me, like, which one do you prefer? I'm like, The Producers, and they're like, fuck you hipster asshole.
Fuck you hipster asshole. Yeah. Well, shut up. I'm going to go drink my IPA. Leave me alone. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not my favorite. I am one of those assholes who really likes Young Frankenstein for obvious reasons. And I even like Dracula Dead and Loving It too, which that's the one that most people are like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah, that was that. I think that's a reason that his directorial career came to an end there.
It is. 1985, they were just like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
We're done.
We'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so an amazing debut. You do get that like John Singleton, Orson Welles, that kind of like, new guy. I say debut. I mean, he'd been writing in television for years and stuff, but in terms of being known, like M. Night Shyamalan wrote 2 movies before The Sixth Sense, but everyone says Sixth Sense is his first movie,
That's his really only film, if we want to call it that. I mean,
yeah, true. But he followed up, The Producers with The 12 Chairs, which is an odd choice because it's based on, a 1920s Russian novel that he turned into a lampoon, which the thing is, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to lampoon something, it should be something that people know quite a bit of. Like when Scary Movie came out, like Scream had just come out, it was time to, parody that kind of thing,
And I think that's a good point. I think that's a really good point because if there's one thing you can say about Mel Brooks' career is that at least when it comes to the films that he has directed, pretty much he's lived and died on the whole parody route. Like that's been what he's been really good at. And it seems to me like after he did 12 Chairs, that's when he pivoted to doing, in essence, parodies of things that everyone knew about. Everyone had experience at the time, the shows like Gunsmoke okay, and the spaghetti westerns of the 60s. So, yeah, what's the next movie he's going to work on? Blazing Saddles, right?
Yeah. And
so,
he thought his career was over as a director.
Really?
Yeah, because they just ended up using him as like a script punch-up artist, like the way like Joss Whedon does a lot of that shit and Patton Oswalt does, and I think they had the most basic of scripts for Blazing Saddles, and they brought in Mel just to touch it up and everything, and he's like, shit, I want to be a director now, I'm just putting in better jokes in scripts. But he ended up, I think, basically rewriting the whole thing, and the director dropped out, and they said, well, Mel, you want to direct it? And he went, yeah, okay. Yeah, and this arguably is the movie he's most known for. I mean, I get producers, Young Frankenstein, possibly, but I think when people think Mel Brooks, they do think Blazing Saddles.
I would agree with that. Most people, when they're talking about Mel Brooks, again, Blazing Saddles is, I guess, kind of the Pepsi or Coke of his work. Yeah, that's the one everybody knows. Everybody knows. Even if you're not a Mel Brooks fan, even if you're like, yeah, I didn't go as deep into watching the movie Life Stinks from 1991, but I know Blazing Saddles. Yeah. I everybody knows that. But yeah, I would agree. That's what most people know him for. That or Spaceballs.
And I feel like we can't talk about Blazing Saddles if we don't talk about, well,
Well, go ahead. What do you know?
All the flagrant, uses of the N-word, all the race jokes from a Caucasian man,
do you think this movie would fly nowadays?
No, but
no.
But I think you have to look at how this movie was transgressive enough to allow. I think we had to be hit in the face in order for things to be a little bit more subtle down the line. And I feel like I'm maybe going to get a little bit of flack from this, but I need, dear Psychos Nation, I need you to understand that I'm saying the problem is white people here, is that I feel that somebody like Mel Brooks had to make a movie like this in order for this type of, racial humor to be accepted in culture for later the weigh-ins and things like that. And I'm not saying black comedians and stuff needed a white man to do it for them. I'm saying that white audiences needed a white man to do it first before they would accept it, from Richard Pryor and people down the line. It's a societal problem, but
it's called our society is systematically racist. So you needed to have someone make the first crack. Honestly, that's what it is. That's what you're basically saying.
Yeah, why did people start listening to Rum DMC? Because they collaborated with Aerosmith. Did they need to collaborate with Aerosmith?
No.
Were they talented enough? No, but in terms of white people
absolutely they were talented enough.
Listen now. Yeah.
No, they were absolutely talented enough, but it is one of those things. Like I was seeing, and this is something funny, and I don't want to get into politics too much, but I was seeing today, and again, we're recording this in advance, so things might have changed since now. But the Met Gala happened, I think, last night, either the night before, and AOC went out wearing a white dress that said "Tax the Rich." Okay, and you had two types of people who were commenting on it, because of course someone's going to comment on it. You had one type of person who was saying, "Good for her," she literally walks into the beehive with a giant middle fucking finger to the bees.
Yes.
Yeah. That takes some balls. Okay.
Yeah.
That's one side. I mean, that's me. I'm in that camp there.
Me too.
Then you had the other side. And the other side is saying, oh, look at her pretending to be for the little person, but she's going to the Met Gala, and look at her. She's how much money did she have to have up to go to that thing? Not even thinking about the fact that the woman literally is a congresswoman, so she's not making a whole lot of money because she's not one of these scumbags on Wall Street who is being funded by them. So you look at her network; she's not making a whole lot, but they were attacking her because she went to this instead of just saying no. she went there to basically flip them off inside the bee's nest. She's not one of them.
Yeah. And she was probably invited for free.
She was.
Come, and the dress was given to her for free.
Well,
because they want somebody like her, because she's, attention seeking.
Well, the thing is, and this is what I kind of saw from it, was the person who made the dress literally had no platform before. So it wasn't made by some high-end fashion person. It was made by someone who put that whole tax the rich thing on it. And now because of that thing, that person now has more of a platform. So it is one of those things that sometimes you need a person on the inside to flip off the bees. You need a person to go in the bee's nest and flip off the bees. Okay? And that's kind of the thing with Mel Brooks, I guess you can kind of, to circle it all back here, is that unfortunately our society is systemically racist. It is. Sorry. It's not a shock. That's the way it is. Okay? This isn't that kind of podcast. This isn't that kind of podcast, but I'm just saying that's the truth. So, yeah, you needed to have someone like Mel Brooks to basically say, guess what? We can start to move our humor away from the lily white humor to something that honestly opens it up for everybody else to kind of get in on it. But I don't think this movie could be made nowadays. I don't think it could.
Yeah, and I do think that like I said earlier, a lot of doors had to be busted down with no subtlety or nuance to say, things are going to change. Like, Carlin getting arrested, Lenny Bruce getting arrested. So
after he did Blazing Saddles, what did he end up doing next? He ended up doing he ended up kind of going into one of my favorites, Young Frankenstein.
Man had a busy 1974. Yeah, Young Frankenstein.
Oh, man.
Same year,
Yeah, so this movie, I was introduced to this movie relatively young. And it always came on at Halloween. And I remember, I think it played on TBS one year when I was maybe around 6 or 7. And my mom was like, you got to watch Young Frankenstein. She loved Mel Brooks. Well, still does. He's not dead. She loves Mel Brooks. And she loved this film because this came out in 74. So she was probably a teenager at the time when this came out. And I watched it and just cracked the fuck up with this movie. It's got everything. It's got, honestly, everything that a good horror parody should have. Because I think a lot of people don't understand that really horror parodies really didn't exist at this time. Like 74, you really didn't have a whole lot of horror parodies. Like the last time you had maybe a good horror parody, I'm not even necessarily good, was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Yeah, and those were more, I would say, just flippant. They weren't parodies necessarily. They were just like, can you believe Abbott and Costello and Frankenstein in the same movie? Wow.
Yeah. But this one, it does a great job of throwing just enough camp with just enough, reverence for the genre. Like, you get the idea that Mel Brooks really has an appreciation for horror movies, especially. And I say that because the man did 2 of these things. Okay, he did Young Frankenstein, and then we mentioned before, 1995, he follows it up with Dracula Dead and Loving It. So I think the man has a love for horror movies, at least classic Universal monster films, because, why would you dip your nose into it twice? But with Young Frankenstein, I love the fact that he quite literally rebuilt the laboratory from the original film. Like, the man literally went out on for that much detail in the laboratory here.
Subtle touches, man.
yeah, but it has so many great actors in this. Marty Feldman as fucking Igor is the showstopper in this movie.
Yeah.
You
can't help take your eyes off him.
well, Gene Wilder and Madeline Kahn and Peter Boyle, Cloris Leachman and Terry Gardner, they're all great. But every single time that Igor shows up on screen, you just stop, and you're just like, what is he going to do next? At least that's how I feel when I watch this. But Gene Wilder is at his most ridiculous with playing the straight man, but oftentimes not really being the straight man in scenes. Like, I love the scene when he says, "We've got to act normal." it's like a little bow tie thing pops open. But yeah, it's such a great film. If you love horror movies like I do, you watch this and you're just like, I'm in.
Especially, obviously, yes, the Universal, monster movies, which I love, and then so far I love this as well.
Yeah. Gene Hackman, I gotta mention him in this because he's such a weird person to put in to this film.
Yeah. I sometimes forget he's in here until like the scene with the blind man, which is from Bride of Frankenstein. But
I mean, they did kind of combine a bunch of the whole lore in this, but like Gene Hackman in 1974, like he had done The French Connection, he had done Poseidon Adventure, he had done all these movies. French Connection, like I think he was working on French Connection too, which I don't think was very good. But like he's done all of these different films. That he's a big dramatic actor, and they threw him in as the blind man who just wants a friend. And it's honestly, I think it's great because it shows a little bit of his comedy side, and we definitely saw that later on when, in Superman, he has a little bit of comedy in his portrayal of Lex Luthor. But
in the second one, he's basically a cartoon.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, pretty much after the first one, anytime he shows up, it's just really goofy. Like what he was basically a cartoon character in the Quest for Peace, right?
Yeah.
Because didn't he show up in that too?
Yeah, because only a cartoon character would say nuclear.
Man.
It's nuclear, Gene. Come on, buddy.
Yeah. But yeah, great film.
Yeah, with Young Frankenstein, it was when Mel Brooks is working with Gene Wilder, and he probably thinks, okay, well, I got this Blazing Saddles movie. Is this one going to be the last one? But Gene Wilder's like, hey, I've been working on this, parody of Frankenstein and stuff, and I want your help. Like, well, let's, make this happen. And I think it was Gene Wilder's clout that really got Young Frankenstein, going. Mm-hmm. And as much as I do love Mel, I think some of the best humor in Young Frankenstein is more Gene Wilder than anything.
Oh yeah. It's also interesting because this, I think, is the only one where Mel doesn't show up as an actor in this. Like, I'm pretty sure he's not in this.
Yeah, he's off camera, like the wolves. That's him going, oh, yeah, shit like that. But yeah, not really on camera.
Yeah.
I don't believe.
So it's and that's a common trait that you see with most of Mel Brooks' films, is that not only will he direct the film and also help write it, but he will also act in it too. Or in the case of some of his later films, sing in them, which is kind of weird. But
hey, he's a song and dance man, Brian.
I know. He is a song and dance man. So it's interesting that Young Frankenstein definitely, I think, is more of a platform for Gene Wilder because he does have to play the straight man, but oftentimes gets pulled in both directions as kind of being the comedic lead with these cast of characters. And it's fantastic writing. I gotta say that. That's the one thing I love about Young Frankenstein is the writing, and the comedy is on point. Okay, there's never a moment where you're just like that joke didn't land.
It is very approachable. Like we talk about Blazing Saddles and certain of his other movies. Like this one, I can be appreciated whether you're 5 or 50. Mm-hmm. As long as you like that kind of silly, sometimes gross kind of humor.
Yeah, there's some sexual things in there. There's and like when I was a kid, I didn't get it.
Me too. Yeah,
I was just roll in the hay. That seems fun.
Yeah, yeah. Because for me, I think this was the first Mel Brooks movie I saw. Because anytime it came on TV, my parents were like, all about it. And Brian, I can say my father did love Mel Brooks because he is dead.
Okay.
No, best thing for him. It's the first time he's been sober in 5 years, and how long I can remember. But
wow.
Real quick, fun story about Young Frankenstein. The most famous thing, the putting on the Ritz scene.
Yeah.
Was written by Gene Wilder, and Mel Brooks said absolutely not. It's too Looney Tunes. It's too it doesn't work. And Gene Wilder just kept fighting him, and after about like 2 hours, like Mel Brooks goes, "All right, it's in." And Gene Wilder goes, well, wait, why is it in? He goes, if you didn't believe in it, if it wasn't that funny, you wouldn't have fought that hard for it. And it's probably the most famous scene in the whole movie, though, putting on the Ritz thing.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. That particular version of it, yes. That's what most people think about when they think about that. Or the individual jokes, like what knockers and roll in the hay and he was my boyfriend. Like those sorts of little tiny jokes people get. But entire scenes, it's definitely putting on the Ritz. Definitely. So after he did Young Frankenstein, he made a movie that, again, going with the parodies here, he made a movie that's literally a silent film in 1976.
Yeah, we were like the first time in like 47 years.
Yeah.
Which, this isn't really a silent movie, considering the soundtrack, like the music of the soundtrack has sound effects in it. So like when cans are popping out of the soda machines going brong, brong, or like when people are knocking on doors, you hear it. So I would say this is a non-talking movie.
To be fair to this.
Yeah.
And I only know this because of the fact that I've been teaching film, that there were silent films in the early days that did have synchronized sound. So it was not necessarily synchronized sound that was recorded on set, but it was kind of like, how can we get music to line up with things like, action that's happening? So that was there. It was much later, and honestly, the development of sound with dialogue and actually recording on set, that came much later. But the whole idea of, can I take this soundtrack and have like the music play along with the film, that was an early idea. So they're not entirely inaccurate with this. But to be fair, you're not going to send the movie out with a full orchestra and say, by the way, this is what you have to play when you play the movie Silent Movie in the multiplex.
Playing at movie theaters that have orchestra pits.
Yeah.
But this is a ballsy way to go. Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, like he's now like the king of comedy. It's like, what's your next project, Mel? I'm going to do a silent movie. Like, what? It's
Why?
a strange choice. Yeah. I mean, it does fit into his wheelhouse of,
and it did make money. Like, you can't say it didn't make money. It made $36 million. So on a $4 million budget. So yeah, it did make money. But that's just, again, 1976, you're 1 year away from Star Wars.
Yeah.
like that's the crazy thing, is that Mel Brooks, say what you want about him, the man has a pair on him. Like, really, he gives no fucks. He wants to make whatever movie the man wants to make, even a silent film. But again, even though the man does this, he still is making something that most people are culturally aware of. Okay, people know about silent films. It's not like he's picking some esoteric thing like the 12 Chairs movie, okay? It's something that most people are familiar with. How can he make a parody of something people are familiar with? He did it with Young Frankenstein. How can he do it with the silent film?
And the thing is, for him, this is it's as close for him as 1926 as this movie, silent movie, is for us today.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Kind of weird.
And you got to, like, in terms of like a filmmaking perspective, the idea of not having to record any on-site audio. I mean, I'm sure they boomed it just so they would, have reference in editing. But the fact that you didn't have to like stress out about the audio, like, it's kind of genius.
Funny thing about this. So I'm actually making my students do, I would teach a field audio class. And one of the assignments I'm going to make them do is basically do a silent movie type thing where they have to record a scene, they have to film a scene, not use any of the on-camera audio, not have any dialogue, and then record wild sound as they're in the takes. So, like, if they have someone running down the street, you can't use that sound. You have to go re-record the sound of someone running down the street and then loop it in. So it's kind of similar to this. But yeah, Yeah, silent movie. It's one of those ones that I don't think people pull a lot when they're thinking about, Mel Brooks. It's even though it definitely made money, I don't think it's one that people default to.
Well, yeah, because it's odd. Like, you look at Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, arguably the two that he's most known for, and then he does Silent Movie and High Anxiety, which you only really know about these two if you're a big Mel Brooks fan.
Yeah. Like High Anxiety, that's a movie that honestly I was not even fully aware of. Like I'd known about Silent Movie. I'd always seen it. I was like, oh yeah, that's Silent Movie is also the one I think he met Anne Bancroft on while he was making that film. But High Anxiety is one of these movies that it's again another parody, but it's a smart parody about Hitchcock. Like pretty much all of the Hitchcock films rolled into one. Because clearly, like, it's High Anxiety. That title is mocking Vertigo.
Yeah, I think Vertigo, wrote North by Northwest, The Birds, and Psycho are the main attacks, but I'm sure there's others in there too, But those are the main targets that he has, which actually Hitchcock helped write the script.
No kidding.
Yeah, he was real into it, and they said, like, after he was at the premiere, they said, what was did you have any complaints about what he did, to your movies and stuff? He said, yeah, I have one. In the shower scene, there's 13 rings on the shower curtain. We only had 10 in Psycho.
Oh, wow. Hitchcock being a dick.
Yeah.
Big shocker there, right? Yeah.
But yeah, so, I mean, I think that this is a turning point for Mel in the sense of, yes, he was in Silent Movie, but he didn't have any speaking lines. So, and he obviously is very, he can do a lot with, pulling his face and in his body and everything. This is the first role that he has as a lead, with lines and everything. So he's putting himself in front of the camera for really the first time here, which, is a switch for him.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. And that kind of follows through in the next role he did, which is one of my favorites. Like, if you had to think about movies that most people don't know about that are Mel Brooks films, and that you love. Like, for me, I know for you it was High Anxiety and Silent Movie. For me, History of the World Part 1 is one of my absolute favorite Mel Brooks films. Like, I put it on par with Young Frankenstein. Just because the first time I watched it, I was like, what the fuck is this? Because it's just so weird. It's basically a covering of all the events from the Old Testament to the French Revolution. And it's just all these goofy things that we've learned about in history class, but it's all through the eyes of Mel Brooks. And it's a wonderful film. It's a wonderful film.
Are you saying the Spanish Inquisition should not normally have a musical number?
The Inquisition. What a show. Yeah. No, it should not have a musical number. But there are so many great moments of this. Like, I love the fact that Mel Brooks kind of flows through most of these little side stories. Like, in one moment he's Moses, another moment he is, I forget what his other characters he plays in this, because
he's a waiter during the Last Supper.
Yes, he's a waiter during the Last Supper.
He's a jester for Julius Caesar and stuff. So he's in and out of all these stories.
He's in all of them. He plays Louis the 16th at the end. It's good to be the king. I mean, this movie has almost everything in it. I mean, it even Gregory Hines also is fantastic in this film as Josephus. But I don't know what else to go. I even love the ending with next in history of World Part 2, Jews in Space. Yeah. I love it. I love the film.
And this seems like this is custom built. Like, if you would say, oh, what kind of movie would Mel Brooks make, say, before he made The Producers? Like, oh, I imagine a series of skits lampooning, like, really important moments in history. Yeah. Like, yeah, this exactly what Mel Brooks.
But the great thing is that this still all kind of fits with his MO. Okay, it's again mocking and parodying things that people are familiar with. Okay, and like I love the whole. Like, I think this is probably a section that is not talked about nearly enough, and it's the caveman section where you have the birth of art. It's person drawing on a cable, and then immediately followed the art critic. Well, I think what does he do? He's like takes his shit or piss on it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And then you even have like music's created, but it's people hurting themselves. And someone's like, okay, I got it now. We're going to have this ow, 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 ooh, you know, and that's how music's created. But honestly, if you've never seen History of the World Part 1, please go watch it because it's hilarious. I love the fact that IMDb calls it a history film. It's not. Not at all. It's 100% comedy.
Abstractly, it's a history film.
But I really think IMDb should not call it a history film. It seems counter intuitive.
Surprisingly, this is one that a lot of people forget about. You know,
I know.
Like you hear like, oh, Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, and then, you know, some people say Spaceballs, some people say Robin Hood Men in Tights if they're on, you know, or more of a recency bias kind of thing. But yes, a lot of people forget about this one, but it should not be overlooked because it is riddled with, you know, tears in your eyes, laughing.
It is prime Mel Brooks. If you love that man's comedy, that one and then the next one are pretty much requisite. Although I would say that I think Spaceballs might be the turning point where we start to see that some of his films are starting to go downhill. There are elements of Spaceballs that I can see where I'm like, this doesn't work nearly as well as you'd think. Spaceballs. Oh, go ahead, John.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say this about Spaceballs. Whether you love this movie or you think, hey, yeah, his career is taking a dive in the wrong direction, it depends on how old you are when you saw it. If you were 8 or 10 and a Star Wars fan when you saw it, you probably think this is the funniest, greatest movie of all time. If you were like
I was
30, if you were like 30 when you saw it, you're probably like, I don't know, Mel isn't as good as he used to be, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know for me, I was, you know, I'm a Star Wars fan. I have no qualms about that. And yeah, I was around 8 years old when I saw this movie and I cracked the fuck up watching it. But here's the thing is I can see areas where I know that he's probably going to have problems in the 90s. Yeah. And it's mostly not even with dialogue so much. It's just certain jokes just didn't land. You know? Like the whole thing with Prince Valium. I didn't find any of that funny, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like there were some things like that. And Joan Rivers, some of her dialogue, I was like, that's just not funny. And I think it was honestly missing some of those you know classic character actors that normally Mel would get.
Is it fair to say that this almost seems like somebody trying to be Mel Brooks?
I wouldn't go that far. I would think of it more or less as Mel Brooks trying to basically, I think kind of renew his roster of character actors. Because that's the one thing is you look at all these films up until 1987 and pretty much he's stuck with the same people. Right?
Marty Feldman, Dom DeLuise, Madeline Kahn.
Yeah. So it's kind of like Spaceballs is one of the first times that he branched out from that core group. He gets John Candy, Rick Moranis, Bill Pullman. You know, he's got some people like Dick Van Patten in it, and I would say that the moments when we see Dick Van Patten, he's hilarious in it. But there's just something about the fact that he's kind of mixed up his roster characters, and I think we're getting a different kind of movie. And I've noticed that pretty much after this, the next movies we get typically don't have the same character actors that he's always worked with. So I think that's probably part of it. You know, you can write this stuff, but if you don't have, you know, Sid Caesar or Carl Reiner or anyone else kind of, you know, performing it, it's not going to land as well as you'd like.
Well, one thing I would say about some of his earlier stuff too, like, you know, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, silent movie, is that those ideas I think can be abstract enough that you can be aware of them without really knowing some of the specific things they're lampooning. Like, you know what a Western is, even if you're not a fan of Westerns. Young Frankenstein, you know there's a lot of like old monster movies, you know, because I remember when I saw Young Frankenstein, I hadn't seen Frankenstein, Dracula, you know, any of those things yet. But I knew that those movies existed. Silent movies, we all know what silent movies are, but the thing about Spaceballs is it's not really a space sci-fi movie parody, it's a Star Wars parody. And if you don't like Star Wars, you might not like this, you know.
Yeah, but I think honestly this was a reaction to just the fact that Star Wars kind of attacked our cultural zeitgeist, basically.
That's odd though, because this came 4 years after Return of the Jedi. I would get it if like 81 or something Spaceballs came out, you know, right in the heart of it.
But here's the thing: is that we also don't know how long this took. Like, you know, how long did the whole getting greenlit process take? So it's very possible that he could have written the script for this thing in 84 right after, and it just took a while to get made. But either way, Spaceballs, I love it. I find it fucking hilarious, but I can see where people are like, it's not really that funny. The next movie he made,
can we, I'm sorry, can we just go back real quick? I wish Lane was on this episode, because when she was a kid, she hated Spaceballs. Because she was so dedicated and militantly loyal to Star Wars that she was like, how dare someone make fun of Star Wars? Oh, man,
really?
Ask her about that.
I will have to.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was hilarious. But she likes it as an adult now, but you know, or appreciates it anyways. But as a kid, she was like, how dare someone make fun of the great Mr. Lucas and Star Wars? Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, I know Mr. Lucas doesn't have a sense of humor, but the rest of us do. But anyway, after Spaceballs, he makes a movie that honestly, like, I don't get it. And it's a movie that I saw. I remember watching this movie when it came out, and because it kind of came out in 91, and then I remember this being kind of a staple on HBO in the early 90s. And it was a movie called Life Stinks. Now, the premise of this is let me break down the premise for you kind of real quickly here. Okay, so the premise for this is that Mel Brooks plays a like rich asshole tycoon person, and basically his I think either his competitor or his partner. Again, I haven't seen this movie in probably I don't know 30 some odd years.
It does not require repeat viewing.
I think I saw it like once or twice when I was a kid, and that was it. But there were a lot of things from it that I thought were funny. You know, like as a kid, I thought they were funny. But watching this again, he basically, you know, goes and does a bet with Jeffrey Tambor's character, Vance Craswell. And the bet is that Mel Brooks' character, Goddard Bolt, can't survive on the poor streets of his city for 30 days. And basically he takes the bet. The bet is that if he wins the bet, he gets basically Jeffrey Tambor's like property that he's trying to buy up. So that's the whole premise here. Mel Brooks plays a poor person, and the problem is that I think this is trying to either make fun of poor people or have you at the same time feel for them, and then also be an attack on capitalism. So it's kind of inconsistent in its tone, you know. And then it's got classic Mel Brooks shit in there too. So it's like, what do you do with this particular movie?
Yeah, and that's sometimes a danger of comedy, is that if you're making fun of one group by having them do something else, you might incidentally be making fun of the person you're not trying to make fun of. But sometimes by punching up, you can accidentally punch down. Like
I get that they're like the whole overarching thing is, and ultimately Mel Brooks' character changes his ways. Big shocker there. But it just feels like you started to kind of attack, Reagan era conservatism and ultimately, Bush #1 conservatism with this movie. And it's very inconsistent. And some of the jokes are funny. Like there's this repeating thing where Mel Brooks and another person are going back and forth saying that they're richer. And it gets stuck in your head and you're just like, oh, I'm richer. I know I'm richer. And it's very weird. It's a weird movie. You can watch it. Definitely check it out. It's goofy. But you know, it's good to know that's in his collection of films. After this,
well, just real quick with Life Stinks, this is one of his only non-parody films that he's ever done.
And I think, honestly,
like,
that
what the hell?
fact this movie didn't do well kind of speaks to that. The man really is good at parody. Like, don't deviate too far. Don't deviate too far, Mel Brooks. You're good at that. So I think it makes perfect sense that the next movie you make is Robin Hood Men in Tights, which, if you're going to pick one from the 90s that just about everybody knows, I think it's Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yeah, this is for obvious reasons. I was born in 85, and, you know, Spaceballs came out in 87. Who gives a shit about Life Stinks? This is the first one that I saw in the theater, like the first Mel Brooks movie I saw, like, actually, you know, going to the cinema. So I have a soft spot in my heart for it. I love Robin Hood Men in Tights. If nothing else, it is one of the most quotable movies ever.
No. I didn't say Abe Lincoln. I said, hey, Blinken.
You lost your arms in battle, but you grew a great pair of tits.
Yeah, I again, I didn't see this in theaters. I saw this on HBO, like I saw most of my films growing up. And I love this film. It's fucking hilarious. Cary Elwes does a great job. Richard Lewis is Prince John. Man, hilarious. And of course, Mel Brooks has to play Rabbi Tuckman and his consecrated wine. Yeah, it's fantastic movie. Yeah, fantastic movie. It's hilarious too. Like, and it does hold up. I really do think it does hold up, even nowadays.
Well, it was he had a short-lived TV series. Like, Mel tried to get back into TV a lot, and it didn't work out. And one of them was a Robin Hood TV show, because I think, you know, he grew up with like the Errol Flynn era, you know. And I think he got one. They did the whole season, the first season, but then obviously it wasn't renewed. And I think they let him know that it wasn't going to be renewed. And then when Robin Hood Prince of Thieves came out with Costner, he was like, bingo. Now, like, Robin Hood is big again. Let's do it, you know. And I think I actually read that they recycled a handful of lines from the TV show into this movie, because he's like, well, nobody saw the show, and there's some good zingers in there. We're going to put it into this movie, you know. But. Yeah.
No, it's a great film. Great film. Definitely check it out. And then, of course, his final film that he ends up doing. And I have a soft spot for this one too, mainly because it came out in 95. I'm a Dracula fan, and sure enough, it's Dracula Dead and Loving It. And I know a lot of people don't like it. I like it though. I mean, I'm a weirdo though. I find every element of this hilarious. I love the fact that it makes fun of Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula in the best way possible.
Yeah.
But you know, you've got Peter McNichol as Renfield, who is hilarious. The man is a carbon copy for oh shit, I'm blanking on the name of the original Renfield actor.
We'll forgive you.
It's not Colin Clive, because that was the original Dr. Frankenstein.
We can all hear you typing away. You're looking.
Yes, I'm, because if I don't figure this out, it's going to drive me crazy. Okay, that is what's going to happen. So here, let me find out here.
Well, yeah, while you're looking up, I will just say Peter McNichol, like
Dwight Fry.
Okay,
Dwight Fry. I knew it was one of those.
But yeah, he always brings it. Adam's Family Values, Ghostbusters 2, this, you know, like he is a show stealer and things he's in. You know, I think one time somebody online on some YouTube channel I watched said, you know, in terms of him in Ghostbusters 2, it said the only person having fun here.
I mean, Janosch is hilarious. I mean, I gotta admit that. But, you know, Steven Weber does his best. I'm sorry, man. You were only known for Wings. So, I mean, it's hard. Leslie Nielsen does a hell of a job. The man's having fun in this movie. You know, I think he's just glad it's not a Naked Gun movie, honestly.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part of the problem with this movie is the Zuckers were I think always considered the poor man's Mel Brooks. And as you know, I love Naked Gun. I love Airplane. Yeah. A Kentucky Fried Movie. I love the Zuckers, but I think putting Leslie Nielsen in this movie almost made it seem like, oh, this is not going to be, worth our time. This is going to be a subpar, lampoon kind of movie. Because, because the next year, Leslie Nielsen made Spy Hard. And it was like, oh.
Well, he did that, and then he also did what? Wrongfully Accused?
Which I think Wrongfully Accused is very funny. But,
yeah.
I think that maybe if they had cast somebody else other than Leslie Nielsen, I think it might have gone.
I don't know who else you go with, though. That's the thing is, I don't know who else you go with.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely get it. I just think that you can tell that everyone is bought into this. They got even Harvey Korman to play Dr. Sue, which I didn't realize that was him. But yeah, I mean, like everyone in this film is pretty much, you can tell that they're enjoying this material. They're having fun. Like the whole thing with Steven Weber, and why I go back to him is I love the scene where he's killing Lucy, and Mel Brooks is like, "Here, just drive the stake through her heart right now." And he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna back up." "Why are you backing up?" "It's okay, just go do it." Blood everywhere. So it's like Mel Brooks knows exactly what's gonna happen. She's not quite dead yet. She's dead enough. Yeah, great film. Check that one out too. Again, it's one of those ones that, if it's not 100%, obviously, because it is one of those 90s Mel Brooks films, and I mean, I think aside from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but Men in Tights, it does have some elements that don't land, but overall, I think it's a good film.
Well, this may seem like an odd comparison, but I'll explain to your listener, is that I kind of compare Mel Brooks a little bit to Michael Moore in the sense that his most recent movie about Trump, his documentary, is everybody said, oh yeah, it was professionally done, and there was a lot of good information in there, and a lot of, if you believe in what he believes in, there's a lot of preaching to the choir, but so many people had said, I've seen this documentary before. I've seen it now 5-6 times. He makes the same documentary over and over. And I think maybe it had gotten to the point where it's, I already saw Blazing Saddles. I've already seen Young Frankenstein. I've already seen Spaceballs. Like, I think maybe people just had grown tired of the Mel Brooks formula, and maybe like, who's next, so to speak.
Well, I think that's a good point. I think the other thing to know is that comedy was starting to change around this time. You had the Jim Carreys start coming out. You had Wayans Brothers. You had movies like Scary Movie that came out. I mean, it was just that I think comedy was morphing away from this very kind of sardonic humor, and I think that is part of it. It's that when you compare it to, say, Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, and you see how that's getting a reaction, it doesn't sit on the same level anymore, which is a shame, because I think that Mel Brooks films, for the most part, are fairly smart. They're not. I wouldn't call them necessarily movies that you have to like turn your brain off to, or turn your brain on to, but they're definitely require that you engage with the material. They're not just dick and fart jokes, although those are in there.
Yes.
So, but I think it's just a different type of comedy was starting to really become popular around this time.
And people think, oh, 1995, like, he didn't retire.
No, he didn't.
He went to Broadway. He's done a lot of voice work. He's written other things that, like, that he didn't produce or direct. And obviously, as we mentioned, a lot of producing. So, Mel has kept himself busy, even though we haven't gotten a new Mel directed parody in, what is that, 26 years?
Well, he tried to make Spaceballs the animated series, and I don't think that lasted very long. I think that was the closest thing we got to it. Was that? But yeah, you're right. He hasn't really made it. And honestly, I don't think he needs to. I think the man's done enough. The man basically shaped comedy for a generation. So yeah, he's good. He's good.
Yeah, he went to Broadway, and then he got his T, which I think he got a Grammy for "To Be or Not to Be," the song where he was Hitler.
Yeah,
that. So yeah, he had his ego, and then he got his T when we gave him his EGOT. So
yeah,
like I said, one of the few people to pull that off. Yeah, so that kind of takes us through his career here, Brian. Since we want to maybe be wrapping up here in a minute, I got a couple of Mel existential questions.
Okay, cool.
We can do to wrap it up here.
Cool.
First up, is Mel the king of the parody film?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody that can. I mean, there have been contenders to the crown like the Zuckers or the Wayans and stuff, but nobody I think comes close to. Charm.
Well, as I said, it's Mel Brooks films, love them or hate them, they are sharp. They're very, very, very sharp. Except for like Life Stinks, that's probably one that isn't that sharp. But for the most part, by and large, they're sharp, very funny. They take chances, and they know the subject material that they're trying to parody. I think that's the big thing there, is that you see a lot of these parody films, like I blame Scary Movie as one of these, where they just kind of redo certain scenes and just add a little bit of comedic twist to it. And none of the scenes you really see in any of the Mel Brooks films ever blatantly completely rip off. Yeah, they might pull a couple things here and there, like Dracula, Dead and Loving It. They have a scene where he comes in wearing his hat, his hair. It's the hair from, the 1992 Dracula, and he takes it off. It's like a hat. Here, hold my hat. But it's not a blatant rip off. And I think that's kind of the hallmark of a Mel Brooks film is, you're getting a true parody of not just a scene here or there. You're getting a parody of a whole genre of movie.
Yeah. And, I would say you look at something like Scary Movie 2, and the scene a lot of people talk about is the scene where the ball falls down the stairs and they all start doing that, basketball routine because that was a really popular commercial that was playing on like ESPN at the time. But that's not going to be remembered, and nobody's going to understand that joke 5 minutes after that movie's out. Where something like Young Frankenstein, everything holds up. There's nothing like, what did that joke mean? Oh, yeah, it had to be there in 1974, or anything like that.
Well, I think the thing, too, is that a lot of his jokes are timeless, for the most part. Nothing is really dated. Some references here and there might be dated, but for the most part, as you said, you can watch any of these Mel Brooks films, and the outfits might change, and some of the actors in there are no longer living, but for the most part, the material will still work and it will still be funny. I don't think anyone goes into a Mel Brooks film and they don't laugh. Even in Life Stinks, you'll laugh at some scenes in there.
I would say the only people that come close to him are the Python Boys and Edgar Wright. And Simon Pegg, but still he's the king, and it's good to be the king.
It's good to be the king.
Yeah. So are Mel Brooks movies, are they timeless, or do you think as generations move on and comedy changes, do you think that for younger generations are going to forget about Mel and his movies?
I think younger generations have a different idea of what comedy is in the age of TikTok. So there is that, but I do think that there is a place for this. I think as there is a place for movies like Jackass, and the ouchie comedy, that's what I'll call it, ouchie comedy. I think there's also a place for this sort of thing. It's one of those things where I think as our responsibility to younger generations is to tell them about these good movies that they wouldn't go and actually watch themselves. Because that's a thing. Like I found that in my own classes. Like I'll be talking about a lecture and I'll be saying, "Oh yeah, check out this movie. What's that movie? It came out in 1999. Oh, that's old.
It's an old movie.
Oh, that's an old movie. It's The Matrix, dude. They're making a fourth one.
Yeah." It does worry me that in 30 years I don't know if I'll be like, "You ever see Young Frankenstein, you little whippersnapper?" And they'll be like, "What are you talking about, old man? What's Young Frankenstein?" So, but hopefully it'll still be around. Is Mel going to be known as an actor, writer, or director? If you had to pick one over the other, I would say he'll be known as a director because director is so coveted. But I think he should be known as a writer first and foremost.
I think his directing will be what people think about when they think of Mel Brooks. They'll go to that. But the truth is that I think his writing has had much more of a deeper impact that maybe is not as visible as the directing is, just because he has been involved with so many different things and kind of been, punching up scripts and things like that. You keep in mind that he's only directed 11 movies, but he's written 46 different credits.
Yeah.
So you kind of can go from there. And a lot of them are things that we do kind of look at as, movies and TV shows that we're all familiar with. You mentioned Get Smart, but he also did, The Critic, which was a short. I mean, he's been involved in a lot of different things. And I think that's one thing to keep in mind. I think at least, especially for like the early period of comedy on TV,
giving us something that wasn't Leave It to Beaver or John Reed,
Yeah, basically. If you want to know how we got to the point where we have very edgy comedic shows now, you really can thank Mel Brooks for that, because that wasn't what we were getting. Yeah.
Here's kind of a strange one, because he only directed 11 movies, and he's really known for, I'd say, 4, and that can vary over, whatever those 4. Did he live up to his potential?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Absolutely lived up his potential. I don't think he's been
active for 7 decades. The man could have made 50
but
comedy.
I don't think I guess for me, I rather take someone who makes 11 really solid movies. Well, 10 if we discount Life Stinks. All right, maybe 9 if we get rid of 12 Chairs and Life Stinks. Okay, there you go.
And Dracula Dead and Loving It.
No, fuck you. No, but I rather take a director who pours their heart and soul into a finite amount of films than someone who does the opposite and kind of does an okay job with maybe more movies. The movies we've talked about today, for the most part, are ephemeral. We will always know them. And they're so part of our culture that when we talk about comedy, we talk about classic comedy, we go back to these movies all the time. And that's because Mel Brooks's whole being is in every single one of these films. So do I think he's lived up to his potential? Absolutely. Both as a director and then, of course, as a writer and a producer. As we talked about with producing, he's brought together so many films that we wouldn't even think about as being films that were Mel Brooks films. Elephant Man, To Be or Not to Be is obviously a Mel Brooks film. But, The Fly, Jesus Christ, The fucking Fly is disgusting. Yeah. But it's a Mel Brooks film because he was the producer on it. So, yeah, he's definitely lived up to his potential, in my opinion.
And do you think that Mel's humor is too simple? I've seen a lot of Pauline Kael and a lot of the more snobby critics saying that Mel is the king of the easy joke, the fart joke.
No, because they're not easy jokes.
Yeah.
So no, they're to make a joke land universally, it's hard. And for the most part, Mel Brooks has been successful in making jokes that, for the most part, land universally. I don't know any other comedian that can aside from maybe George Carlin, that's kind of the only other person I could think of, who can make anyone laugh as effortlessly. You want to call that easy, or you want to take that as the easy route? I don't think it is. I think it's smart. And it takes a mastery of the art form to be able to make that many people laugh for that many years, decades. So, no, I disagree with those fucking critics.
And lastly here, what do you think when he does pass away, which is hopefully never, what do you think is the headline? Is it Mel Brooks, king of the parody film, has passed, director of Young Frankenstein? Like, what do you think is the headline that goes?
The world got a little less funnier.
Yeah.
That's it. As the world got a little less funnier. It's kind of like, honestly, when Mel Brooks passes away, it's going to kind of leave a hole the same way as George Carlin passed away. Like it's that kind of level of mastery of this art form that you lose someone like that. You've got their memories and their films and their work, but you're not going to have another Mel Brooks. You're not going to have another George Carlin. You're going to have something different. You will never
Carlin,
get that back,
When Carlin passes, said, and creator of the 7 words you can't say on television, and Jamie Lee Curtis says that when I pass, it'll be Halloween actress passes, and I've come to terms with that. Like, what movie do you think that they first mention when it comes to Mel Brooks? Is it Producers?
Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles. Yeah.
Blazing Saddles. Young Frankenstein.
Director of Blazing Saddles has passed away. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That and Young Frankenstein, I think, will be. It's funny they came out in the same year because those two will be. Yeah, writer-director of Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein has passed away.
Yeah. But again, the world got a little less funnier. Please don't die, Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
I know we've predicted death before, but let's not be accurate on this one. Okay,
yeah, you can live another 10 years.
Just be fine. You're just looking more like yogurt.
A little bit, yeah. Hey Mel, if you make it to 100, you got to direct one more parody movie.
I'll kill him though,
and there'll be like 5 other directors there to kind of help him.
I think what he should do is he should direct a Stanley Kubrick film. Like he should do a Eyes Wide Shut one because that movie killed Kubrick. And if Mel really wants to get out, just do one of those. Just do one of those parodies. Okay. Any more esoteric questions from you, John?
No. I think we kind of covered the whole career.
Yeah.
It's nice with directors like this that are in front of the camera too, that are personalities. It's easier than saying like we're gonna do film retrospective on David Fincher. He's a good director, but like who the fuck is David outside of the movies he's made? But
yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we've talked about Mel to death, not meaning death for him, but just saying we talked about his career. Don't die. John, where can they find you at on the social medias?
The Unreal J Wolves. If I don't really tweet all that often, but if you tweet at me, I will respond. Try to be nice.
Try to be nice.
I'm on the Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm posting there, and but most importantly, YouTube. J-Dub's Video Nasties. Please check it out and help me out and subscribe. Even if you don't plan on watching that often, subscribe is one click.
Subscribe to his man's stuff.
Yeah.
Subscribe to his stuff. It's good stuff. Awesome. You can find me at Brian Cunningham, also on the Psycho Show page. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Psycho Show. You can also find us on the Epicast Network, epicastnetwork.com. Be sure to check out our YouTube-centric series from the Concession Stand that's on YouTube.
Yes.
We haven't put out a new episode in a while, but we've got some in the can. We just have to put them out. But take a look at our YouTube channel. We've got some great content there. If you have a question or a favorite movie or you really don't like Mel Brooks, maybe you really hate Spaceballs, let us know. Contact us at cinemapsychoshow.com.
Yeah, give us any feedback. I'd love to hear what people think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you might say, like, you know what? I really love Jackass. And why did you have to insult Jackass? Okay,
Facebook,
dude.
Twitter. Hit us up with your Mel Brooks opinions, please.
Yeah. Be sure to subscribe or follow us wherever you listen to audio, and we will see you next time.
Brian, I got to play. I want you in on it. It's called Springtime for Bin Laden.
Oh, man, that's terrible.
Epicast.